Hi, it's me, Brooks. Welcome to Heal This. I'm here with Tammy Cooley, my very best friend, and we are talking about how we met in our lives, how we've stayed connected, and how being an ex-Mormon came about, how all of that played a part in our lives and our healing journey, and how we got to where we are today is kind of what we're going with. Um, Happy New Year. It's 2025. Yeah, it's time to really start being more yourself. You know,
I
the
love that.
saying, yeah, the saying, new year, new you. No, it doesn't have to be a new you, just need to be more yourself. Last time we were talking about how we met and, how I came on real strong and wouldn't leave you alone. And,
Yeah.
and then how we really just at that part of our lives, we were definitely super Mormon, right? I mean, I
Oh yeah,
was,
we were really very involved doing all of the things. We
yeah,
had little kids, husbands. We were
yep,
both stay-home moms. That was our whole life.
yep. And, I remember you doing this too, like tons of cooking, tons of like sewing and crafting and making clothes for the kids, baking bread. I remember doing this big project where I had wheat in its original form and I had multiple types of wheat. I was very proud of this.
Yes, I
And
remember.
yeah,
I did
and
not do any of that.
I
I
would
was
I
not a
would
bread
show
maker.
mainly young women because I was trying to train them up, right?
Right.
And and all of them would say something totally different and wrong too, not wheat. It was like bird seed, this bird seed. And I would say, okay, so this is wheat and we're going to grind it. And I would show them how to grind it. And then we would make bread from it, and they were always just so like, whoa, this is amazing.
Like magic.
And
You were
it
a
was
witch
magic.
before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, taking it's this alchemy, right? We're making this beautiful thing out of something that came out of the earth. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were super involved. I had multiple callings. I was teaching music, I was teaching ever, like all the time. We were always doing stuff together, passing each other in the hallway and spending a lot of time talking to each other because we were kind of each other's therapists a little bit. We both were definitely knew we were going to go into this avenue at some point somehow. I didn't know, and an alternative, like like timeline and life. I knew
Universe,
we
yeah.
would universe, yeah. We would somehow make it and we did. But yeah, so still very active in the church. And then there were some things that happened and you ended up leaving Juneau.
Yeah. So before that, though, one of the things that um, we did together was the Ladies of Light.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it was one of those things that kind of evolved into something bigger. The last time that we did it was the biggest thing that,
Hmm.
I mean, this is the biggest thing that I had done to that point
Yeah.
that involved, people outside of the church and more of a community kind of a thing.
Right.
And so I don't know. I know for me, because we lived in Juneau and we talked about like the effects of no sunshine, rain every day, cold, like all of these things. You were born and raised in California. I was born and raised in Utah. I was not used to not seeing the sun and not
Hmm.
having, you know, being able to really get outside and enjoy it the way that I was used to. And so for the time that I was in Southeast Alaska, for me, it was very oppressive.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I didn't like to have to get on all the rain gear and do all the things that you had to do to go outside and enjoy being outside and not be wet and cold.
Hmm.
So, I ended up staying inside a lot, um, which wasn't good for my mental health ultimately.
Hmm.
So, anyway, we did this thing. So, you want to talk about it? Because really,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it was your
So,
idea.
well, so I okay, first of all, you have to understand that I think everybody like November in the year when the days get shorter, very like you notice it,
Hmm.
and so in Juneau, especially at the end of October, it would start to get really cold, and you could watch the snow literally coming down the mountain. Like you're like, okay, it's going to snow pretty soon, and it was dark, and so I just decided one year I'd had enough. I'm like, okay, we have to have something to look forward to between Halloween and the holidays, and so it was kind of like around Veterans Day, I decided we were going to start doing the It's Getting Dark party. And so the very first one we had, there was about 30 people there, and it was just at my house. And, I'm like, what do you crave, when it's cold and yucky outside? It was like soup and freshly baked bread and lots of chocolate. And so I think there were 30 people there, and everybody brought something. It was like you either
Hmm.
had to bring a soup, bread, or chocolate. And we ended up having so much chocolate. It was crazy.
It
In
was.
fact, people were like, I want to bring this. And I'm like, yeah, we already have 3 of those. Why just go in a cookbook and figure out something that, we don't have yet and bring it. And so we did. We had so much, and it was just so fun. It was pretty much that first one, I think, was everyone were members of the church. And
I think so too.
yeah. And then the next one, I was like, okay, we're going to get a little bit more going on here, and it was bigger. It was like closer to 100 people. I feel like it was a lot of people. And we did we had all of these fun things that we did where we're like we did a fashion show. I don't know why that comes up.
Because you put your thumbs up.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And but we did a fashion show, and it was like everybody had a box. Like we separated into groups, remember? And like
Yes,
you like had to dress everyone up, the one person up using whatever was in the
it
box.
was in the
Anyway, it
box.
was the still same thing. It was like we just all looked forward to it, and I just remember, oh yeah, I had that thing on the back here on the back porch because we were like, how are we gonna fit all these
All
people?
these people.
And and it was like members of the church and then not members of the church
Yeah,
too.
because people
And
brought their friends.
yeah, we were like, bring a friend, we'll do that. And so there was like 100 people, and you have to remember we didn't drink alcohol. We had no there was nothing besides basically water to drink, right? I mean, like punch or something.
Mm.
And then soup, breads, and chocolates. And we had about 100 people, and ladies. It was only ladies because, and it was ladies of light because we were in the dark, right? And I remember I had done this humongous painting for the end of the dining room that said, "There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It's called spring." Because it was like we were just
Yeah.
waiting for it to be brighter and lighter outside. And yeah. Oh, and then we had like some music and like some like a
Games.
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we kind of like went with more of a, conversation, like a little talk or something. And so then, it just progressed into being a lot more people. And then finally the last year we did it, I rented out a place like to go have it, and we ended up having like over 300 people selling tickets. And the whole point was that we were going to take this money that we earned or we collected and give it to a family where the mother had cancer and she couldn't pay her bills. And so it was kind of like, you know, my thought process is that we had all these really amazing people together. We should be doing something good for our community.
Mhm.
And it just felt good. And at this point, we had an entire room of chocolate. I remember we had 2 chocolate fountains, and
Yes.
it was just like, it was amazing. And the food was so good. Everything was always so good. And it was a lot of fun. And Tammy gave an amazing talk for everyone and emceed, and she did a great job. And, we did earn a good amount of money, and we gave it to a little family who, the mom, she had cancer, and they were
Mhm.
just falling behind on their bills because she couldn't work. So I do think there's a place for that still. So and I think after um we both moved, it just stopped. But I'm still wanting to do the It's Getting Dark party because it still gets dark.
And it gets dark at different times of the year, right? It's not,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
symbolically, when we were there, like we had a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But as life has gone on and we've moved away, like you said, I was the first one to leave Juneau, and we left for a really dark reason.
Yeah.
We had a tragedy happen in our family, and I was in a place in my life where you come to that crossroads where you're questioning everything you've ever known, everything you ever have thought, wondering why these kinds of things happen and why you can't prevent them.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that I had to hold me up in the past was my faith and my belief in the church. But at that time, all of it came crumbling down. And it wasn't because of lack of friendships or people who cared about me. It was really the basis that I had put all of my faith. Those things were all tested. My marriage was tested. My family relationships were tested. And when I came back to the fundamentals of what the church taught me about what was going to be there and hold me up, that wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had so much, I had a decision to make. I had a decision to make whether I was going to stay in my marriage. I had a decision to make about if I could stay in the community where I really felt at that time attacked and hurt a lot
And judged.
and judged harshly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, it just came down to we need to go somewhere and make a new life. And so that's what we did. And, it wouldn't be till years later that I look back on that and go, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have thrown in the towel. You do that thing where you question everything. But then I look at the path and I look at how we've been able to stay connected and the growth that we've had. And even though, we both left the church, we've had this parallel thing kind of always happening.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was, you know, working towards and growing and learning and overcoming the latest challenge, the ladies of light and all of those things are still like there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we talked about in our friendship, and some of that stuff is just what kept me going through one of the hardest times of my life, and then having to start over and move to from Juneau to literally the middle of nowhere in Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
where I didn't know anyone, and that wouldn't be the first time in my life that I moved somewhere I didn't know anyone and have to start over.
Right.
But this time I felt like I had a different foundation. I felt like I had more support. I feel like I had more of that core because you and I had spent so much time together.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple of other core friends that have just
Right.
been with me forever and will be with me forever. So that's what I leaned on. That's what I relied on to go, okay, you're okay. It's okay. If you don't know anybody in this town, you'll
Well, and you're in
figure it out.
survival mode at that point. It's like you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about
No.
how am I going to, you know, just get there and how am I going to take care of everybody? You're not thinking about all those details.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it wasn't until years and years later, but
Yeah.
in that moment, it's like, okay, we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. These are all the good reasons. This is going to work out. It's going to be fine.
Right. What year
So
was that?
that was 2008.
Yeah.
It was the spring of 2008.
That makes sense. It just got really, really difficult, bad for your family. And so you had to go. And what she didn't know was that I would drive by your house like probably, 4, 5, 6 times a day and just cry. I was so sad.
And
I
what
was
you
like,
didn't
who's
know
this?
is that I'm sitting in a whole new town, in a whole new place, sitting in my living room looking across at the place in the chair that you used to come and sit in and just do the same thing. I would just
Yeah.
cry. I'm like,
Right.
she's not
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. That was really, really difficult time. I know, selfishly saying that because I know you were going through a lot. And it was also because we weren't together physically, it was like there was a time change and then like talking on the phone becomes like difficult
Hmm.
but it's still like we were still definitely, connecting a lot at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we were
cause
still
yeah,
talking a lot. And
but it was just so out of my realm. I remember that. I remember feeling like, she's over there and I'm still doing this. And I'm still struggling with all the things I was struggling before that she left, and I'm just
yeah.
like, I don't have a way to verbally process them at that point. Um, yeah. And so I'm trying to think of, I would have had 3 kids at that point, 2008, you're
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
And so my youngest would have been 4. Um, so 4, 6, and 8 at that
Hmm.
point. And definitely things started to shift and change very shortly after that time for us, and our family. Just things, with the kids and kind of externally, there were things that were happening that were taking us out of Juneau more and more.
Hmm.
And I think the more time we spent outside of Juneau with, when you have the 3 little kids, it's like, and it's like they want to go outside and they want to play. And then you'd have to bundle them all up and then make sure that they were like paying attention to what they were doing and where they were going. And one of those years, I remember, I think my youngest one was younger though. And, and we had built a house and there was a bear that kept frequenting our yard, and my youngest kept wanting to go outside and she had no idea, she had no understanding of why she couldn't go outside. I'm like, because you're going to be a snack, like
This is
I'm
the thing.
like
Unless you've had this experience somewhere, it doesn't have to be
yeah,
Alaska, but right, like there's a lot of
yeah,
places where there's wild animals, right? But it's not like some places where you can just let your kids out in the fenced backyard and they can play and you can keep eyes on them. Like you literally have to be out there. You have
yeah,
to be the thing to keep the predators away.
yeah.
And it's a lot. I mean, it
It's
was
a
a lot.
lot.
It was a lot for me. I
It was a
remember when
lot.
the very first place we moved was King Salmon before we moved to Juneau. I
Yeah.
had no idea. I mean, I literally pluck a city girl out into the bush of Alaska. Luckily, my husband at the time, I mean, he's an outdoorsman, so he knew some stuff. But I was learning by osmosis or whatever. I don't know. I just got plunked in the middle of the tundra, and I'm like, I don't belong here. I literally felt
Yeah.
like an alien. But one of our very first experiences there was, we had a fourth grader at the time, a 3-year old, and a 2-year old. And so my very youngest wasn't born yet. And so the fourth grader would go out to the bus stop, which was a little walk down the way, and wait for the bus to come. And it was dark, it's fall time. I just sent my kid to the bus stop. Like that's what I thought you did. And we were probably there. I don't even know if it was a week before one of our neighbors went to my husband and said, "Hey, I noticed your kid waiting at the bus stop alone in the morning. Do you know that bus stops on a bear trail?" And I'm like, what? So of course he comes
Yeah.
home and he tells me, right? And all my heart sinks. I have the pit in my stomach. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna call CPS. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I ask, I'm like, hey, are you scared in the morning when you go to the bus? Like, what are you? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm sitting at the bus stop and the bears are outside. It's like no big deal. And I'm like, oh my
Uh,
God, you never said anything. I had no idea. He's like, well, I didn't think anything of it. Yeah, till you get eaten.
yeah.
So of course, then, every morning now I'm like driving to the bus
Right.
stop and waiting till the bus comes. Like, that wasn't things you learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You don't know. You don't know. Uh,
should have done a lot more research on Alaska.
yeah.
But
I had
I'm
one time I had the kids in I was riding a bike and they were in the back in the little buggy thing. And I'm
yeah.
just going along doing my thing, and I come around the corner and a huge bear. I mean, not like a big one. It looked like a grizzly, could have still been a black bear, but was right on the path, just eating something right there off. And I just stopped so fast, and I was just like, ah! And then, and it looked at me and I was like, shoo, shoo, what did I do? That was
Mhm.
a big moment for me. And I just, clapped and like screamed because I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're right there, my babies.
Yeah.
And so it ran off into the bushes. And I'm just like, well, what am I going to do now? Because I was going somewhere. It wasn't like I was just on a, you
Bike
know,
ride.
little bike ride. And so I turned around and then I went back and I just was going so fast and I was just like, ah, you know. And I'm looking behind, make sure it's not chasing us or anything. It wasn't, but
uh,
just terrifying. You don't realize that, there's things. So yeah,
the
those were just
dangers.
there's a few times seeing bears. Just that was just normal. Just
But
hanging
right,
out
like,
and you're
think about that experience. How many women do you know? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think about this all the time now because I've done this thing that most people haven't.
right.
And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's no wonder I have a little anxiety or I'm a little, more freaked out about some things than other people would be because
Yeah,
a 10 or 12-foot moose is going to pop out somewhere, or
right.
a Kodiak grizzly is going to come by, or the ravens are going to take your lunch, when
Yeah.
you're just trying to have a leisurely day at the
And
water
yeah,
with your kids.
we had friends who had chickens, and which was rare, very rare. Do you have chickens in Alaska because it's so cold
Yeah,
at night? You have to keep
heat
them
them and
warm.
mhm.
Yeah, and but then they do like the free range thing, and they would be out there, and eagles just come down, just snatch them up, break their necks.
Do you remember where I tried to have a garden in Juneau?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. So we had this greenhouse and we were
Yep.
so proud because we had grown just about everything we could think of, and we found like exotic thing. I thought it was exotic things that we could grow, and so excited. Spent months and
Mhm.
months and months getting everything ready, and then we'd had this little garden plot. Go out, spend the whole day like making it perfect, planting
Yep.
everything, and the very next day get up and it is completely decimated.
Yeah.
Not a thing in the ground.
Mhm.
And I just stood there looking. And that is the last time I planted a garden.
Yeah.
And when somebody's like, "What do you mean you have 7 acres in Wyoming and you don't grow anything?" This is why. I just don't want to put all of that
Ruined
time
it.
and effort. I don't
Yeah.
want to put all of that time and effort for eagles or ravens or bunnies or whatever it is.
Deer. We
Deer.
ours were deer. They would just come and just take the carrots right out of the ground, and we had them in greenhouses too, and they would still figure out how to get in there. I'm like, dang. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know. I'm just not. I'm like, someday maybe there's a magical person that can show me how this works.
Yeah.
and I'll be able to harvest something. But until then, I'm not. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
I
good with
get
that
it.
choice.
Yeah. So, we're hardcore Alaskan women, we're doing it. We would always be hiking, our family was big into hiking and camping, and loved to fish, loved to ski. I had never seen it snow. I had never seen snow. So moving to Alaska was a big deal for me. I had never been skiing, so that was a big deal. And once you get over the fear of it, it's fun. Once you get over the fear of falling,
I
then
never did. That's another
it's
thing. This
fun.
is where we're different. This is where we're so.
Yeah.
I grew up in Utah. Everybody skis. My entire family skied.
Yeah.
Not
But you
me.
don't
I mean,
ski. Yeah.
I tried. I really did try, and there's a lot of funny stories about me on the slopes,
Yeah.
Beaver Mountain, or other places. I've had to be rescued by ski patrol. I I get the fundamentals, but can I coordinate to do it?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. That is not a good idea. So no, I don't.
Stopping is really something you got to learn first.
Pizza.
You
No.
got a pizza. Yeah. Yeah. I think I did the bunny trail twice. And then my ex-husband took me up on like one of the hardest.
Black
Um,
diamond.
yes, I really do think it was that.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it
I'm
was.
I'm up on this, I'm like got my little ski outfit
So
on. I'm looking so
cute.
cute and stuff. And we're on the lift, and I'm like, wow, this is really high and this is so beautiful. I'm like, how do we get off of here? And he's like, you ski off. And I'm like, but I don't know how to ski off of this thing. And he grabbed the back of my
And
ski,
pushed you off.
and he just pushed me off of there. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm learning how to do this. And one of the things that I just remember, of course, you went like zigzag. So there were really big zigzags for me going down that thing. But there's like 3-year-olds flying past me. Like they
Yep.
have no worry in the world. Obviously it's
Yep.
a lot, they don't fall very far. And it, a little fall, whereas mine's like a big fall. And yeah. And then I think the very first time I went down it, I ended up having the whole, yard sale with everything everywhere and right underneath the lift, and everybody's like, woohoo! So yeah, it was good. It was good. It's fine. I did it 2 or 3 more times, and then I was like, I'm done. I don't need to do that for a little while. That was my first time. So, but the kids like to do it. So we did that. But yeah, so you had left, let's just say, and of course, we'll speed up to a different time where, my mom was sick, and I was having to leave Juneau a lot for other reasons, for work kind of situations. And I just remember thinking, maybe we should move out of here. And specific things lined up. A house became available in a warmer state down south, and it was in Arizona, and so it just worked for our situation. We'd put our house up for sale and business up for sale, kind of a thing, and we moved out. And I think the more time, I had lived there for 15 years. So the more time that I spent in the sunshine, the more time I was like, I really need this in my life right now. And I woke up every single day so surprised that the sun was still out. I would wake up and, go into the bathroom and like peek the little, oh my gosh, it's
Still
still sunny
there.
today. I'm like, whoa. And so that was amazing. And it was a place where we could be a little closer. The drive or the flight to California wasn't that far. And so I could get over to see my mom, and she was not, she was obviously not doing well. And so, and then the kids were able to do the things that they needed to do that, that they couldn't do in Juneau. And that was the thing. And I think I mentioned it in one of the other episodes, especially, even trips I've taken back to Juneau. As soon as I land, like I'm starting to land in Juneau, it's just like, ugh. There's just not a lot of options for really anything. And you cannot get out of there very easily. And I just remember feeling that way. And, that's not a big deal when things are great, but when things start to get difficult, then
Yeah.
it is hard to feel so isolated. And for me, I have a hard time with it getting dark outside. It really does something to my mood. I feel depressed. I have to really work on that. And getting outside when it is light, I have like they're called SAD lights, right? Seasonal affective disorder lights,
Disorder.
but
Hmm.
I call them happy lights because they make me feel a little happier. But I have one right behind my coffee machine. So, like, when I wake up and I'm going to get coffee, I have it on. So it's like I have light because, you still have to take the kids to school in the dark, right? Like, you have to get
Right.
up. It doesn't matter where you are, it's still dark out if you're waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. We were in Arizona and definitely active in the church at that point. But it was a little different because now we're in a totally different place, but everyone in that place knew who we were. Still, it was not like you moving to Wyoming and nobody
Yeah.
knowing you. They knew who we were because my in-laws' families lived there. And so they all knew who we were connected to. And so, of course, when someone knows you or you move into a specific area where they know you, there's expectations that come
Hmm.
along with that. And if you're not living up to those expectations, then right away you feel a little judged, maybe you feel a little like looked at a specific way.
Right.
But that happens even when you don't know anybody where you live, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
I know you had some things going on in your life that people were kind of like, I don't know how we feel about this situation. So anyway,
Yeah. So I'm in Wyoming. You're in Arizona.
I come out to see you and we go out to Colorado for an event and
Hmm.
we end up seeing each other because I'm going to be close to you. Maybe we can see each other.
Yes.
And so there was a little bit of tension from that situation because
Yeah.
I was a little bit on, lockdown. I don't know how else to say it.
To say the least. And I was not as aware of what was going on. Right.
Right.
And there was a lot. Like I had one of my kids with me, you had all of your kids with you. There was just a lot of things going on. And it was like, okay, wow, this is weird.
Yeah, it was weird. It was really tense.
And we hadn't seen each other in what at that point it was like 3 years.
Right. I remember it's all coming back to me now because the plan was is that we were going to go to a restaurant and that you were going to show up there too and that we were going to see if the kids recognized each
It
other or
would be
saw
a
each.
surprise,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
surprise.
Yes. And then it was just kind of like it's a little awkward. Like
Oh, this
we
is
did
so
yeah,
weird.
we didn't know. It didn't really turn out exactly the way we thought it was going to. But I mean, it was still really good to see you. But also there was a lot going on in my life that I like was not talking about.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think more than anything, just because of our connection, that was the thing that I was picking up on. And so in that moment, we couldn't talk about it because your husband was there. Um, and so it felt, I was just like, wow, okay, so a lot of things have changed. Maybe, you know, I don't know. I was just questioning,
I
right? Like,
think
oh,
I think it was something too like both you and I had this thing. I mean, I don't do it as much anymore and neither do you, but in those situations you're like, is this me?
mhm,
Like, are you mad at me?
Yeah.
And I was like, I just remember when you said something to me about it later, I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It has nothing to do with you at all. It's just the fact that I'm in a toxic relationship. And
Yeah.
so it's just spilling over all the time. And people can just feel it. They just haven't put the dots, connected the dots of what's
Well, and
happening.
you weren't in a place to feel safe enough to really, really talk about it. I mean, you and I had talked about some things, but not in the way of, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. It was more, when we were living together in Juneau, it was more, how do I deal with this? What's wrong with
Right.
me? Right.
Right.
Like, and again, in the context of the obedient, dutiful, faithful wife, what do I do? Because I'm trying to be good and please my
Right.
husband and do all the things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so those were the conversations. So we knew that there were things. I had things, you had things. They were very different things,
Very different. Yep.
but still affected us as women and affected us in a way where we were in situations that we couldn't always talk openly about what we were really dealing with or what we were really thinking,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yeah. And I think, because it's that Pandora box thing, right? It's like you're opening it with the idea that if I say these things, then I cannot ever really go back. I can't put them back into the box. And
Right.
so, and I think when you care about a friend, when you care about a child or another person deeply, and they're in a relationship or a situationship, whatever it is, that's not healthy, it's like I don't know, you start to then put kind of some expectations onto them of like, well, what are you going to do different? When are you going to get out of this? How are you going to go? What's going to happen? And I wasn't ready for that. And I knew that. And it was definitely one of the reasons why I didn't talk too much to my mom about it either, because I knew for sure she would be at the door saying, let's get out of here.
Well, and don't you think too? So with that, all of that is accurate. But the other piece of that, and maybe this is just me, but I don't want to put that on you. I don't want to put that on someone who
Right.
cares about me because I know they're going to be worried. I know
Oh,
that
yeah.
I don't want to be a burden.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to shield you from having to think about my stuff and
Hmm.
your stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it's
And
like, I thought I just had my shit together. It's like, I just thought that I had it all together. And because it wasn't spilling over into the kids' lives yet, and it wasn't really spilling over into other people's lives, I was just trying to survive all of it. And, again, I didn't have the worst situation ever, but it wasn't healthy and it was very toxic. And so,
it wasn't good for you
no,
ultimately, right?
no, it wasn't. I don't think it was good for any of us, honestly. And so I think we were just going in a wheel constantly, like, oh, it'll be okay, it'll be all right, and then it would just be awful.
Right.
And then it was like, you know, me just picking up pieces and putting a smile on and saying, okay, let's just try it again. Um, and I just, and honestly, and I think, I can't remember if we've talked about this part or not, but, I think it was one of my reasons why I was like, I want to know like what it's like in Tammy's house. Like, I want to know what it's like in so-and-so's house, because is this happening everywhere? Is this normal? Because I was assured that it was.
Right.
And I was told that this is just normal, this is just what you do. And I'm just kind of like, is it really? Are all these people walking around miserable? And
I
I
mean,
think
some, yes, for different reasons, but
yeah.
I remember we did have some conversation like that. Um, because our husbands at the time were very, very different people.
Hmm.
And where you've talked about it and you just said it, you felt very controlled,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I didn't have that. I had other things, but I didn't have that.
Right.
It wasn't a controlling type of situation in that, I mean, I could come and go, I could do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Looking from the outside in, even on my relationship back then, it looked like I wore the pants. And in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ways I did, because he just let me kind of do whatever. That's how it appeared. Well, I'll say that's how it appeared. And in some cases that was absolutely true. But I remember where my husband was he was the guy that would come home and do dishes and help with dinner, and if I needed a project that, right, like he's gonna do the thing, and like that was one of the things where you're like, it's not like this for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even though my situation wasn't perfect either, I think we had a lot of conversations about why is that, like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember very vividly 3 little kids, 2, 4, 6, running around. I had been keeping them alive all day, doing all the wonderful mom things, even homeschooling, doing all that stuff. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And standing at the stove, getting ready to cook dinner, and hearing my ex-husband pull into the driveway, and I could just feel my whole body just freeze and
Mm,
just have this visceral reaction to the fact that I should brace myself for a fight or an argument. It's not going to be pleasant. And I wondered if other people felt that way about their husbands. I didn't know. It was something that we don't talk about. Everything's great and wonderful and bubblegum and roses and rainbows and,
yeah, because we've made it
butterflies.
to this point, right? We've made it to this point where we've successfully procured a man. We have children, we own real estate,
Right.
we're right, like, we in our mind at that
Right.
time, we'd
Right.
made it to the top of where we were going in this life,
That's right. I
right?
actually
I mean,
had
for
I
real.
actually had relatives who were in the same boat, and they would say, "I mean, our lives are pretty much over. Right? This is what we this is it. Our life is over." And I'm like, "Our life is
It was
over?
over.
What?
I'm
Oh
like
my
20
gosh!
something over here. I'm
Oh my
30
gosh!
something over
Yeah,
here,
not even 30 yet." To be continued. Thank you for listening to Heal This. I hope you will like and subscribe and also share. And come back and listen to the rest of the story of Tammy and I and our adventures in Alaska and how we moved out of Alaska and how we used to be Mormons and our story together of our friendship. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your support.